Put your hands up if you think we've got a cracking railway system. Troll. Our railway system sucks. And you know what? You don't have to be some rampant lefty to think that our railway system and its privatisation is an absolute disaster. According to the polls, there's overwhelming support for renationalisation. Actually, there was a poll by YouGov back in 2015, and it says, when people are asked about bringing the railways, water companies and other utilities back into public ownership through renationalisation, the percentage who support it is 58%, with just 17% in total opposed. But what's really interesting is if you go through the, how people vote in that, amongst Labour voters, 74% support, only 7% against. Amongst UKIP, those rampant lefties, 64% support and just 17% opposed. Amongst Tories, True Blue Britain, 42% support, just 29% opposed. Now that's because you don't have to be an ideologue to think privatising the railways was a very stupid thing to do. There's this ongoing dispute with Southern Rail. Now, a deal's just been proposed by ASLEF, the trade union representing train drivers. Now, the train drivers have narrowly rejected it, 54% to 46%. We live in quite a union-bashing kind of country where people are, and you know what? When people go on strike, it is inconvenient. I've personally been inconvenienced by it. But I think the right to go on strike is one of the most fundamental, basic democratic rights. If we had stronger trade unions in this country, then we wouldn't have suffered such a prolonged decline and stagnation in people's wages, or a deterioration in terms and conditions for working people. But just park that, because we should be angry about the railways, but we shouldn't be angry with trade unions. We should be angry with the Conservatives who flogged off the railways and the rail companies who are frankly screwing us all over. That's not true we don't have any nationalised railway systems in this country, because the government supports nationalisation as long as it's foreign governments. If their state-owned company want to take up... Now, it's not true to say that our government doesn't support state ownership of the railways. They support state ownership as long as it's any other state but Britain. So whether it be the Dutch, Germany, more Germans, more Dutch, French, loads of foreign governments have ownership of huge swathes around railways. No offence to them, I don't think their main interests are looking after British citizens who they're not accountable to. Now, we did have public ownership of one particular franchise, East Coast Railway. Now, East Coast was failing under private ownership. It was taken under public ownership, and it became the most efficient rail franchise in the country, which is hugely embarrassing if you believe that the market is innately more efficient than the public sector. It paid huge amounts of money to the Treasury, so that money went back to you and I, rather than going into dividends for shareholders. And also, its customer satisfaction increased. So what did the government do? They went, oh, we can't be having that. Go and give it to the private sector so they can make a load of money out of it again. Guess what happened when it was handed over to Virgin Trains East Coast? They went, we're hiking up these rail prices. Now, rail privatisation was such a disaster because it left us with an inefficient, fragmented rail system. Some of the most expensive rail tickets in the Western world. Now, you always get defenders of rail privatisation going, but the number of passengers surged. Yeah, it's kind of quite big reasons for that aren't to do with people going, railways are brilliant, I'm going to flock to them. But the nature of work, not least people having to travel further to get to work, increased number of students, the way our economy has changed quite dramatically in the last 30 years. But as passengers have surged in number, rail companies haven't invested in new stock because to do so would obviously cost money. So you end up with massive overcrowding on rip-off trains. In some morning train services into London, 1 in 3 passengers now have to stand because of lack of space. You know, this is with ticket prices where it can be cheaper to fly to many European capitals than to get a train up to Leeds from London on the same day. The amount British commuters pay on their rail fares is up to 6 times higher than European counterparts. And it's not just the expense of you buying the tickets, the taxpayer, is being ripped off as well. A report in 2013 found that the British state, gives out billions more public subsidies for railways than it did in the days of British Rail. But of course, a lot of that money just goes off to dividends for shareholders. You have had improved infrastructure, investment in new technology, but it's been underwritten by the state. It's state-led innovation, which is compromised by the fact that it's a railway system that is run on the basis of profit rather than people's needs. We live in a society where we are told all the time that the private sector is superior to the public sector, that the drive for profit and competition means drastic improvements in service, in efficiency, that it's just better, that free market capitalism is the best possible way of running everything.
The operation of the free market is so essential, not only to promote productive efficiency, but even more, to foster harmony and peace among the peoples of the world.
That's why the railway system is such an embarrassment to pro-market ideologues, because it discredits a core argument that they've proposed. You know, those millions of people, conservative voters amongst them, aren't suffering from sort of false consciousness and delusion about the railway system. You know, you get people always say to me, you don't remember how bad it was in the British Rail. Yeah, but if you look at the polling, older people who do remember British Rail think that privatisation is a disaster. It's the lived experience of these passengers who are spending huge amounts of their pay packet for the luxury of a late train where their face is stuck in the armpit of some random stranger.
This guy really smells. Doesn't anyone use deodorant in the city?
So for me, this isn't just about the railways. It's about how do we run our society? Do we fight more for a society that is run in the interest of your needs and aspirations and ambitions, or one which is run in the interest of shareholders who don't have your interests at heart? That's a loaded question, but I don't care. It's my video. So I want to hear from you. Maybe some of you think, well, to be honest, Owen, I think you come up with a load of lefty nonsense, but on this, I agree with you. Or maybe you think, nah, you're massive commie for having the audacity to suggest our railway system should be publicly owned like in other countries where you have right-wing governments. But I want to hear your thoughts. Does this question the model of society in which we live in? Are you more angry with the union still, rather than the people who privatised the railway system and all the rest of it? I want to hear, you know, again, as ever, loving your thoughts. So, as ever, subscribe, spread the word. I'll see you next time.